If I'd tossed the envelope, I might still be having Sunday dinner at Lou and Ellen's, still laughing at stories about Dad. But it had the city seal on it, and drought notices don't usually come with congratulations. I read it twice at my kitchen table while my coffee went cold. 40% reduction. The city was thanking me for something I hadn't done. My own water bill, the one Lou dropped through the mail slot every month in his tidy blue handwriting, said I'd used almost exactly the same amount of water for 3 years. One of those numbers was a lie, and I already knew which one I wanted it to be. I wanted the city to be wrong. Most people would rather find a mistake in their favor than one in their landlord's favor. But most people didn't have Lou D'Amico as a landlord. Lou was the man who stood beside my father's hospital bed and said, "Nicky, don't worry about the boy. I've got him." I was 41 when Dad died. Not exactly a boy, but grief makes everyone younger. Lou and my father had been best friends since they were 14 and got caught stealing peaches from behind Corrado's market. They worked construction together, coached my Little League team together, argued over Sinatra versus Tony Bennett, and made up before dessert. When Dad's knees went bad, Lou fixed his back steps without being asked. When Lou's daughter had trouble with her first husband, Dad sat on her porch at 2 a.m. until Lou got there. So when Dad left me a shoebox of insurance forms, funeral programs, and one handwritten note that said, "Ask Lou if you need anything, but don't let him pick the wine," I did exactly that. 6 months later, when my lease was up, Lou offered me the upstairs front unit in his 4-flat on Marlowe Street. "Why give money to strangers?" he said. "Come here, you're family." The building was old red brick, with a narrow vestibule that smelled like wet coats in winter and tomato sauce most Sundays. My apartment had creaky maple floors, radiators that clanked like they were arguing, and a kitchen window over the alley where I could see the neighbor's pear tree. The water bill had always been separate. Lou explained it the day I signed the lease at his dining room table, while Ellen put out pizzelles and told me I looked thin, which is how Italian women say hello. "City sends me the main bill," Lou said, tapping the lease with his pen. "But I had sub-meters put in years ago, so everybody pays what they use. Keeps it fair. Otherwise, one guy takes 20-minute showers and everybody eats it." I nodded. I teach social studies at a public high school, which means I can explain checks and balances to sophomores who think it sounds like a banking app, but plumbing is mostly mystery to me. A meter was a meter. For 8 years, Lou slipped a handwritten water invoice through my mail slot every month. Unit 2B, submeter SM2B-14, usage, amount due. I paid by check. Every month he texted, "Water bill's in your box. No rush." And every month I rushed, because that was how my father raised me. The city notice arrived on a Thursday in late March, tucked between a gutter cleaning flyer and a dentist reminder. The drought had been on the local news for weeks. Reservoir down, lawn restrictions coming, conserve where you can. I expected a lecture about low-flow showerheads. Instead, under the blue city logo, it said, "Congratulations. Your property has reduced water consumption by 40% compared with your 5-year average. Service address, 1186 Marlowe Street, units 1 through 4. Meter, 48721C. Current quarterly consumption, 22,000 gallons. Quarterly. 3 months. Lou's most recent bill, still under the magnet on my refrigerator, said I alone had used 18,000 gallons in 1 month. Same as February, same as January, same as most months going back years. Sometimes 17,800, sometimes 18,200, always around there. Always in Lou's slanted handwriting, neat as fence boards. I stared at the city notice, looking for any door out. Maybe the city meant cubic feet. Maybe Lou meant something else. Maybe the notice was for the wrong address. Then I saw the detail that would not fit back into place. 1 master meter. 1 serial number. 48721-C. Units 1 to 4. My lease listed my alleged submeter as SM2B-14. Lou's bills used that number every month, like a little stamp of legitimacy. I had never once asked where it was. My phone buzzed. Lou. Water bills in your box. No rush. Same smiley face. Same garnish, as Lou called it. I went to the mailbox. There it was, folded in thirds. My name in blue ink. The basement door was off the back hall, past the coin washer that ate quarters, and the shelf where tenants left half-used paint cans, warped blinds, and one fondue pot nobody had claimed since 2019. Tenants used the basement for laundry, storage, and the breaker panel. I had every right to be there. Still, my hand felt guilty on the knob. It smelled like damp concrete, dryer lint, and old pipes. I turned on the bare bulb near the stairs and found the water main along the west wall. I had walked past it 100 times without really seeing it. That night, it looked like a witness. The city meter had the same number as the notice, 48721-C, stamped under cloudy plastic. I took a picture. Then I followed the pipe with my phone flashlight. It ran from the meter, then split into 4 branches that disappeared into the ceiling toward the units. I expected to find little boxes or gauges on each branch, something with numbers, something that could be SM2B-14. There was nothing. Smooth copper, a few elbows, old solder joints, red-handled shutoff valves, dust. A spider web that brushed my forehead and made me say something not appropriate for school. But no submeter. I traced my line twice. I knew it because Lou had once pointed out my shutoff during a sink leak. "This one's yours, kid." I was 39 at the time. I photographed everything. The master meter, the branches, the uninterrupted line to my unit, the empty spaces where a submeter would have to be. I even recorded a short video, narrating quietly like I was making a lesson for absent students. Standing in basement of 1186 Marlowe, March 23rd, approximately 7:15 p.m. This is the main water meter, serial 48721-C. My voice sounded formal and shaky, but I tell my students primary sources matter. I did not write, "Please help me find out whether my godfather has been stealing from me," because even government forms have limits. The records arrived 9 business days later. During those 9 days, I taught classes, graded essays, made coffee, and passed Lou on the front walk while he salted an icy patch by the stoop. "Morning, Marcus," he said. "You get that bill okay?" I had rehearsed being normal. I had not rehearsed how much his face would look like home. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks." "No rush," he said, waving the salt scoop. "You know me." I did know him. That was the problem. I didn't mail the check. When the city records came, they came as a spreadsheet attached to an email from a clerk named Diane, who wrote, "The numbers were boring, which somehow made them worse. 23,100 gallons, 22,700, 24,000, 21,900. A summer bump to 28,300, probably somebody watering tomatoes illegally. Then back down. That night, I matched those records against my checks and Lou's bills. My filing system is 1 part shoebox, 1 part optimism, so it took a while. But by midnight, I had enough. Lou had billed me for between 16,000 and 19,000 gallons almost every month for years. If his numbers were real, I alone was using roughly double the entire building's water. I live alone. I shower quickly because my hot water heater has opinions. I don't own a dishwasher. The only plant I've kept alive is a pothos, and only because it has no standards. I was not secretly operating a car wash out of my kitchen. Still, one person's bills could be explained away by someone determined enough. The next receipt came because of a holiday card. Before Sylvia moved out of Unit 3A, she used to leave Christmas cards in the vestibule. Sylvia was retired from the library, sharp as lemon peel, and the only person I knew who ironed jeans. She had moved 6 months earlier, but one misdelivered package still sat on the vestibule shelf with a forwarding sticker showing her new address. I did not take the package. I copied the address into my phone while telling myself this was only slightly strange and not yet the start of a true crime podcast. Then I wrote her a card. Dear Sylvia, I hope you're settled and that the new place has fewer radiator arguments than Marlowe Street. I received a city notice about water usage that doesn't match the separate charges we were paying. Did you ever receive monthly submeter bills from Lou? If you kept copies and feel comfortable sharing, I'd be grateful. If not, no worries. Marcus in 2B. She called 2 days later at 8:06 a.m., exactly the kind of time a former librarian would consider reasonable.
I knew it, she said, before hello. Good morning to you, too.
I knew those bills were nonsense. I told my daughter, either I'm bathing a horse in here or something's off. She said, Ma, don't pick fights with the landlord when you're trying to move. I should have picked the fight. You have copies? I asked. Of course I have copies. I'm not an animal. That Saturday, I brought cannoli to Sylvia's condo. She accepted them with the solemnity of a notary, made tea, and produced a manila folder labeled Marlowe Lease Bills. 2 years, she said. I shredded older things when I moved because my daughter claimed I was one grocery receipt away from an intervention, but I kept the lease and utilities. Her lease had the same clause as mine. Tenant responsible for water usage as measured by individual submeter. Her submeter number was SM3A-14. Her bills looked like mine. Lou's handwriting, monthly usage, charges just below the threshold where a person might make a fuss. There's no meter, is there? Sylvia said. No. She folded her arms. That son of a gun. Coming from Sylvia, son of a gun landed like a felony indictment. I explained what I had. The conservation notice, basement photos, city records. I was careful not to call it fraud, though I heard how little I believed mistake. What do you need from me? She asked. The question stopped me because I knew the answer, and saying it meant stepping over a line. I might need a statement, just that these are your bills, that you paid them, and that Lou represented them as sub-meter readings. I'll do better, she said. I'll scan everything and write it out. My daughter's a paralegal. She'll make sure I don't sound like I'm yelling in cursive. Sylvia, you don't have to. Marcus, I liked Lou. I still like Ellen. But liking somebody doesn't mean you let them invoice you for imaginary plumbing. A week later, she emailed me her lease, 24 bills, canceled checks, and a signed statement. Factual. Dry. Devastating. She stated that Lou D'Amico told her a separate submeter measured her unit's water, that she paid monthly charges based on those alleged readings, and that she had never been shown or given access to any submeter. At the bottom, she added one sentence. Had I known no such meter existed, I would not have paid these charges. That changed the shape of the thing. It was no longer my confusion. It was a pattern. The next receipt came from the county permit office, which smelled like toner and old carpet. Their website kept freezing, so I went in person during spring break. A clerk with silver hair and purple fingernails called me to window 3. I need permit history for a residential building, I said, specifically plumbing permits for water submeters. She looked up. Submeters? Yes. People always think those don't need permits. She shook her head with the weary joy of someone whose pet peeve had entered the room. They do, since '99 here. The building had permits for a roof in 2008, furnaces in 2012, electrical work in 2016, and a water heater in 2018. No submeter installation. No plumbing modification that could plausibly hide one. The clerk stamped the printout and circled the blank plumbing section. If they installed them without permits, that's a violation, she said. If they didn't install them at all, that's not my department, but it's somebody's. Whose? Rental Housing Board for landlord billing practices. State Utilities Commission if they're reselling utility service. Maybe Consumer Protection, depending how spicy you want to get. By then, my folder was thick enough to make denial inconvenient. City notice, basement photos, city records, my bills and bank statements, Sylvia's lease, bills, checks, and affidavit, permit history. I made scans and labeled everything like a person trying not to fall apart. 01 city notice 48721c.pdf. 02 basement photos no submeter.pdf. 03 public records usage data.xlsx. Then I made a mistake. I told Anthony. Anthony isn't my cousin.
After Dad died, Anthony checked in more than some actual relatives. We met for breakfast at a diner off Route 6. I brought the folder because I wanted a bridge. That was what I told myself. The truer version was that I wanted someone from Lou's side to say, "This can't be right." Anthony listened without interrupting. He flipped through the papers, one hand around his coffee mug. Finally, he said, "How much are we talking?" For me, maybe $3,800 over 3 years, depending how they calculate it. More if they go back 8. For all tenants, much more. He rubbed his face. Jesus. I haven't filed anything yet. Good, he said quickly. Something in me tightened. Good? I mean, let me talk to him first. Anthony. He's in trouble. Anthony lowered his voice. The building. Money. I sat back. Ellen got sick? You didn't know? He looked pained. She didn't want people fussing. Early stage, but treatments, doctors, all that. She's doing better now. Do you? Because what he means to me is exactly why this is awful. If some management company did this, I'd file the complaint and sleep fine. Lou told me I was family. He told my father he'd look out for me. Then he invented a utility bill and handed it to me every month with a smiley face. Anthony looked down. Let me talk to him. What happens after you? I wasn't planning to. And give me 1 day to tell Ellen before certified mail shows up. She deserves that. I didn't want to owe him mercy. Mercy felt like another bill I was being asked to pay. But Ellen had pressed a recipe card into my hand at Dad's funeral and kissed my cheek while I cried into her shoulder like a child. 1 day, I said. That afternoon, I almost called Lou. I had his name open on my phone. I imagined his voice. I imagined denial, then explanation, maybe tears, and I hated the part of me that wanted satisfaction. Revenge can dress itself up as justice so convincingly you have to check its pockets. So I made rules. No social media, no threats, no secret recordings, no breaking into anything. No name-calling in writing, because every email can become an exhibit, and because my mother would rise from the grave. Before filing, I knocked on the other current tenants' doors. Mrs. Patel in 1A lived with her adult son and kept marigolds on the front steps, even though squirrels treated them as a buffet. She listened with her hands folded while I explained. When I showed her the city notice, she frowned. Sub-meter? She said. He charges us water, yes, but I never saw a meter. Her son Ravi brought out the house folder. 5 minutes later, headphones around his neck, he was wide awake. So we're all paying fake water bills? I can't say fake as a legal conclusion, I said automatically. But the charges don't match any actual individual meter I can... When I explained, he laughed once without humor. Man, I thought we were just bad at baths. Marisol appeared behind him, looked at my folder and said, I told you those water charges were too high. They gave me copies too. Not because they hated Lou, because daycare had gone up $200 a month. Every overcharge was groceries, gas, toddler shoes. That was when my private betrayal became embarrassing to me. I had been thinking of Lou stealing from me, from my father's memory, from the little circle of trust I had left. But Lou had also been taking from people with no sentimental history to cushion the blow. I filed the complaints the next morning at 7:42 a.m. The State Utilities Commission form asked whether the landlord was reselling metered utility service. I checked yes with explanation. The Rental Housing Board form asked about deceptive or improper pass-through charges. I attached the same packet to both: lease clause, bills, proof of payment, conservation notice, public usage records, basement photographs, permit history, Sylvia's affidavit, and a simple table comparing the master meter's quarterly usage with the monthly charges billed to me. I kept adjectives out of it. The facts had enough teeth. Then I waited.
People imagine justice as a gavel. In real life, it is automatic replies and one woman named Karen who works Tuesdays through Fridays and calls from a blocked number. The housing board assigned a case number and asked permission to share my complaint with the landlord. The Utilities Commission asked whether Lou represented the charges as actual metered usage. I sent bills showing sub-meter reading and the lease clause. They asked whether the basement was accessible to tenants. I sent a photo of the unlocked door and the lease provision for laundry and utility access. They asked for other affected tenants willing to speak. Mrs. Patel agreed after talking to Ravi. Devin and Marisol agreed immediately. Sylvia agreed and texted, "I will not be bullied by plumbing." I printed that one for morale. Lou called 4 days after the agencies notified him. I was in my classroom after school, erasing the board. His name lit up my phone, and for a second I was 12 years old, caught doing something wrong.
Hi, Lou. Marcus. He sounded older. You filed complaints.
Yes.
Against me.
Yes. In the hallway, students shouted about a lost AirPod. Life is rude that way. Continuing in the background. You could have come to me, he said. I closed my eyes. Could I? After all these years, you don't even give me a chance? I gave you 8 years of chances without knowing it. That's not fair. It was the closest he came to anger. Then explain it, I said. He breathed out hard. The system was supposed to be separate. Was it installed? No answer. Lou. I had a guy tell me he could do it years ago. Cash job. Then it got complicated. City, permits. I should have fixed the leases.
Anthony told me some. His voice sharpened. Anthony should keep his mouth shut. He was trying to help you. No, he's trying to look like the good guy. Lou coughed, then softened. Ellen was sick. The bank was on me. The other building had violations. Every month I thought, just get through this one. Then the next. Don't. He stopped. Don't swear on my father. The line went quiet. I loved him too, Lou said. I know. I loved you like family. I know. And you're still doing this? That was the doorway he offered me. Choose family, meaning choose silence. Yes, I said. He covered the phone. I heard Ellen in the background, a muffled question. I heard my name anyway. When he came back, his voice was flat. Lou stood near the washer, arms crossed, looking at the floor. He had lost weight. His belt was cinched one hole tighter than usual. I noticed because affection is cruel. It keeps taking attendance even after trust leaves. Mr. Alvarez asked, "Can you identify the individual submeters for each unit?" Lou said, "No." "Are there individual submeters installed?" "No." "Have tenants been billed for water based on individual submeter readings?" Lou rubbed a hand over his mouth. "Yes." Mr. Alvarez wrote it down. The Utilities Commission requested Lou's city water bills, tenant invoices, leases, and payment records. Lou cooperated after hiring a lawyer. The case officer told us cooperation affected whether the matter would be referred for criminal review. That became the compromise nobody celebrated. Lou admitted the billing was improper. He claimed financial distress and poor record keeping, not intent to defraud. The agencies did not decide his soul. They decided his paperwork.
The rental board ordered restitution for all current tenants and known former tenants within the 3-year look-back period, plus interest and a statutory penalty. The Utilities Commission prohibited Lou from billing tenants separately for water unless legal submeters were permitted, installed, inspected, and properly disclosed. The city amended the building's rental license record to note the violation. For 5 years, he would be subject to annual audits of utility pass-through charges. If he sold the building, the violation would remain in the file. My share came to $3,949.18. Mrs. Patel received a little over $2,100. Devin and Marisol got $1,480, which Marisol called 2 months of daycare and 1 dinner where I don't cook. Praise be. Sylvia got $2,870. She called after her check arrived. I cashed it, she said. Good. Immediately, before anybody could change their mind. I smiled for the first time that day. Also good. You cash yours? Not yet. Marcus, I will. Don't make the money holy. It isn't. It's just money that got lost and found its way back.
She was right. I still put the check in my desk drawer, under Ellen's recipe card, and did not cash it. The fallout came in pieces. Anthony stopped texting for a while. Then he sent one message. I know why you did it. I just hate it. I wrote back, me too. That was our entire conversation for 6 weeks. Lou's daughter Gina left me a voicemail I listened to once and deleted. She said I had humiliated her father, that he had helped my family for 40 years, that people make mistakes, that I could have handled it privately. Her voice broke on the word father, and I couldn't hate her for it. If someone had done this to my dad, I might have made the same call. Loyalty is noble, right up until it guards the wrong door. Ellen sent nothing. That hurt the most. I saw her once, in June, at the grocery store, in the canned tomato aisle. We both reached for the same brand of crushed tomatoes, because grief and habit apparently shop from the same shelf.
Hi, Marcus, she said. Hi, Ellen. She looked thinner, hair tucked under a scarf, eyes tired but clear. How are you feeling? I asked. Better, most days. I'm glad. We stood with 12 kinds of tomatoes between us.
Ellen's gravy. Do not improve. He had copied it years before, adding little notes like more basil than she admits, and simmer until Lou stops complaining he's hungry. After the funeral, Ellen gave me Dad's copy because she found it tucked inside one of his cookbooks. The first Sunday after the restitution order, I tried to make it. I browned the meat too fast and scorched the garlic because I was distracted, which is both a cooking error and a personality flaw. The apartment filled with the smell anyway. Tomatoes, basil, sausage, memory. I sat at the kitchen table with a bowl I couldn't finish and looked at the cabinet where I kept the first city notice tucked between takeout menus. Congratulations. What a stupid word. As if I had won something. I had gotten money back. I had stopped a fraudulent charge. Mrs. Patel, Devin, Marisol, Sylvia, and whoever came next would not pay for ghost meters. Lou would have to open his books once a year to people with clipboards.
Those were real things, good things. But I had also lost the last living person who could tell stories about my father as a young man without making him sound like a saint. Lou knew the version of Dad who cheated at cards, sang off key while hanging drywall, and once backed a cement mixer into a priest's lilac bush and blamed poor urban planning. That history went quiet with one phone call. People say found family can be stronger than blood. They're right. They forget to mention that when found family breaks, there is no legal vocabulary for the injury, no divorce decree, no probate, just a chair at Sunday dinner you no longer occupy. By fall, the building felt different. Not worse, exactly. Clearer. Lou hired a management company for maintenance requests, probably because speaking to us directly had become too hard, or because his lawyer told him to. The first time I emailed about a radiator leak and received a ticket number in response, I laughed so hard I had to sit down.
A ticket number from Lou's building. The world has a talent for absurdity. The water charges disappeared from our rent statements. The city bill remained in Lou's name, paid as an owner expense. He raised rent at renewal by a legal, modest amount and disclosed everything properly. I signed for 1 more year because moving felt like letting him chase me out of my own home, and because the kitchen light at 4 in the afternoon still reminded me of my father reading the sports page. Anthony and I eventually met for a beer. We talked about baseball for 20 minutes with the focus of men defusing a bomb. Then he said he almost lost the building anyway. I heard. He refinanced with Gina's help, sold the other property. I nodded. He doesn't say your name. I figured. Anthony peeled the label off his bottle. Ellen does sometimes. I looked at him.
That sounded so exactly like my father that I had to look away. I miss him, I said. Yeah, Anthony said. Me too. We did not hug. We are not a hugging people unless someone is born, married, dead, or leaving for college. But when we left, Anthony squeezed my shoulder once. It was not forgiveness, exactly. It was a little bridge plank laid down in bad weather.
A year after the first notice, another city envelope arrived. I knew what it was before I opened it. Same city seal, same recycled paper, same earnest blue graphics. This time, it was addressed differently. To residents of 1186 Marlowe Street, Units 1A, 2A, 2B, and 3A. Not to one account pretending to be 4 private little stories. Not to a master meter disguised as individual responsibility. The notice explained that the building remained on a shared master meter, that conservation comparisons reflected whole property usage, and that tenants should consult their leases for utility arrangements. It was boring, accurate, and almost beautiful.
The bar graph said we had reduced usage another 12%. Probably Mrs. Patel's new low-flow shower head, Devin fixing the running toilet, and me finally replacing the kitchen faucet washer I had ignored for 6 months because I am, in specific domestic categories, an idiot. There was no bold congratulations this time. Just, thank you for conserving water. I stood at the kitchen counter with the notice in my hand. The same counter where the first envelope had made my coffee go cold. Same apartment. Different weather. Then I opened the cabinet beside the stove. Inside, taped to the door, was Dad's copy of Ellen's gravy recipe in a plastic sleeve, stained red at one corner from my first failed attempt. Under his warning not to improve the sauce, he had written a note I never noticed until months after he died. Good things take the time they take. I read that line, then taped the new conservation notice beside it. 2 pieces of paper. One about water, one about sauce. Both in their strange ways about what gets shared, what gets measured, and what happens when somebody you love decides the difference doesn't matter. I still make the gravy sometimes. I still use too much basil because Dad was right and Ellen underreported. I still haven't had dinner at Lou and Ellen's again. Maybe I never will. Maybe some doors close so quietly that years later you still find yourself listening for the latch. But the next time a city envelope comes, I open it. I read the fine print. And I don't let my coffee go cold.